Well, hello and welcome to the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise Show. I'm your host, Corey Sievers, and on behalf of the Savvy team, welcome to the show. It's World Heart Day tomorrow at time of recording, so I reckon we need to do some things to see just how well you're going. What do you think? Yep. I think you're going to survive. I think you will survive based on the information that you're going to learn in this particular session. So if you are new to what we do here in the Savvy team, we're all about helping you reach a higher level of health and lifestyle. And so when you connect in with our community, you'll have access to all of the step-by-step action plans, innovative solutions, and all the guidance and support that you need to truly optimize your life. We have a whole range of wellness plans. Our Healthy Heart Challenge is just one of those that's not even listed on here. And so, we're going to be delving into some of the aspects from that particular action plan, but also giving you some additional information that can help you to prevent heart disease, the leading killer in the Western world. So here in the Savvy team, we want to inspire you, motivate, and guide you to really go for it, to go for achieving a higher level of health and lifestyle. And look, this is such an important topic. Heart disease is the leading killer in the Western world, and it's largely preventable. So I really ask you, share this with people that you care about. The World Health Federation, while some of what they put forward I don't necessarily personally agree with, nevertheless I do like what they're doing and this particular year focusing on encouraging everyday people to be heart heroes, to do something to optimize their own heart health and to essentially pay that forward. And so we love the whole little story of the Pay It Forward movie with little Trevor McKinney. And he said that, if in his social sciences experiment or project, if I just helped 3 people with a needed favor and they paid it forward and helped 3 other people and everyone just kept spreading it, he said we could change the world. And folks, that's what we can do as heart heroes. That's what we can do here. If you join us in our Healthier Heart movement, because we've been on a mission for some time to really transform the understanding of what can be done to optimize health and well-being, and in particular, the area of heart health. It's important before we get underway to understand that everything that I'm going to be sharing reflects my personal research and experience and is for educational purposes only, so should not be seen as medical advice. The information is general in nature, and so therefore all individual health concerns have not been taken into account. Comments and experiences should not be interpreted as therapeutic claims or any medical advice. If you have any question as to the appropriateness of the information with regards to your own health, then please do discuss this with your healthcare provider. Now, that being said, we encourage you to take self-responsibility for your own well-being and to continually educate yourself and learn more on this topic and complementary medicine in general, because as I assert, much of the information that you're being told, just isn't up to date. So, that's why we're titling this topic, What Your Doctor May Not Tell You About Preventing Heart Disease. Now, I'm here to report the news of many cardiologists. So I'm going to be reporting the news. I do not want to be a medical professional. I'm not a medical professional. I'm a passionate researcher and educating, wanting to share with our community members the things that can help to optimize their well-being based on my research. And because I do have an ability to piece things together and put things together, that's sort of why I can really be of support to you, to help you to understand some of the way all these things fit, the way the pieces of the puzzle fit together. You are most welcome to read all of the different books and research that I have read to further your understanding of this topic. So I'm going to be reporting the news of Dr. Michael Houston, of Dr. William Davis, of Dr. Stephen Gundry, of so many doctors. They're just the ones that I can think of off the top of my head that all form into today's today's material. So do understand that many, in fact, many of the things that we're going to be, Dr. Joseph Kraft even, and also many of the things I'm going to be talking about, your doctor may not even know. Let that sink in for a while. Because it's, doctors are very, very busy. They have to deal with many different things. And if they're not necessarily up to date with the latest research, and if they're working within a certain paradigm, then they may not be able to see outside of that paradigm. And many of these doctors that I've studied and read their works and looked at their research papers and everything, they even themselves said that they found themselves sort of stuck in the old paradigm for a while until something kicked them out. So by no means am I denigrating doctors and the work that they do. But what happens is that there isn't any support structure in our Western medical system for people to prevent heart disease. So that's what we're here to talk about. There's no structure. There's no real structure of support to prevent heart disease. What happens is that we have a brilliant system to mop up the damage and sort of put you back on track if you don't look after yourself, right? But we're not doing a great job from a medical point of view at preventing heart disease. So let's look under the hood at what we can do to really make those changes and as individuals actually work towards preventing heart disease, reducing our own risk. We'll then even we'll not only help our family and our own wellness, but we'll take the load off the medical system as well, because heart disease is a very expensive disease. So look, here in the Savvy Team, if you want to improve something about your health and wellness, we can guide you there. And before we get underway, the reason that this, I think, is such an important topic, and I mentioned earlier in the show that I first came across this whole topic, really. It first crossed my path when, at the age of 41, my aunt died from essentially cardiovascular disease. And so it was an aneurysm, and I then learned, as a kid, I then thought, well, it meant the brain. It was just like the brain. Something went wrong with the brain. But then when I started to learn about capillary fragility and the fact that we actually insult our vessels by many of the things that we do each and every day, and if we don't look after our vessels, then with nutrients and all that sort of thing, that really started me to understand. It was only just 1 month after my aunt died that I learned the sort of things, the initial stages of some of the things that I'm going to share with you today. So thinking back, I think, well, if I'd have only, there's nothing I could have done in that situation, but if I'd have known this beforehand, I may have been able to educate my family members on what they could do to prevent and even reverse heart disease. And this, obviously it was a silent killer for my aunt. She didn't know she had the issue, but when I look back, she had warning signs. And so we have a free class that we talk about. I think I did it as part of the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise show, but I go through the 9 warning signs, early warning signs for cardiovascular disease. Now, she had many of those. When I look back, she had many of those. So she had the warning signs. So the dashboard warning lights, as we say, were going off for her, but she didn't take notice of the warning because none of it showed up. So medically, none of the things really indicated that, because they were looking at only she didn't have high cholesterol, she didn't have high blood pressure and those sorts of things, but she did have some warning signs that things were breaking down in the body, that her vascular system was under attack. So again, my grandfather died from cardiovascular disease in his 50s. So, actually, no, I think it was just 60. So just 60. So he died from cardiovascular disease. My mother had a congenital heart defect and then ended up passing away from that, and from really from the impacts of surgery. So when you really start to think about it, that all of those sorts of things did launch me on somewhat of what can we do? What are we missing? What are we not being told? How can we as individuals focus more on what we can do to improve our own health and well-being and prevent cardiovascular disease? And that's what we're here to talk about. Don't want to get all somber on you, but there's something that you can do about it. That's the great thing. Many people don't realize this is good news. In my opinion, this is good news that if you take self-responsibility, you can do something about your cardiovascular health. It's such an important topic to talk about the fact of what we can do for cardiovascular disease, because as a broad classification of disease, it is the world's biggest killer. So we're here talking about World Heart Day, and there's a lot of fighting against heart disease and all that sort of thing, but 17.5 million deaths per year happen from cardiovascular disease, and yet it's largely preventable. 1 in 10 people aged 30 to 70, yes, 30 to 70, die from cardiovascular disease. And so it's not an old person's disease at all. And 31% of all deaths are from cardiovascular disease. So let us know right on in if cardiovascular disease has touched your life. Now, it's a bit of a cardiovascular disease is the classification. They often call it interchangeably. The terms heart disease and cardiovascular disease are all interchangeably used. And you may go, well, there's nothing wrong with my heart, or I didn't have any heart disease in my family because my parents died from strokes. That's all heart disease. Okay, it's all cardiovascular system related. So it's because of the loose classifications of the terminology that confuses many lay people. So it is our world's biggest killer, and yet it is certainly largely preventable. So here in Australia, 51 lives are lost every day, according to the Heart Foundation. 1/5 of all Australians will die from cardiovascular disease, and 1 Australian every 28 minutes. 1 Australian every 28 minutes will pass away from cardiovascular disease. So do you think it's worthwhile focusing on a bit of a healthier heart movement? Here in the Savvy team, we do. And love this quote on this particular issue from the Dalai Lama. Just as ripples spread out when a single pebble is dropped into water, the actions of individuals can have far-reaching effects. And that's why we're on this movement, this healthier heart movement, because you can do something to impact the people around you in terms of their awareness about preventative strategies. So join us in this healthier heart movement, and let's make that ripple effect out into our communities. Lighten the load here a little bit, but a funny cartoon here from Randy Glasberg, and I love some of these cartoons that he puts together. But whenever your cholesterol gets too high, a sensor will send a signal that automatically locks the kitchen door and turns on your treadmill. I love that. We certainly need to change our diet and get more exercise to improve our cardiovascular health and reduce our risk. So what is a heart attack? So what actually is a heart attack? If you don't really know, if you're not really sure about what actually happens, then in essence what happens is that you've ended up with a plaque buildup in the artery. But it's not just the buildup that is the issue. The issue happens when you have unhealthy blood that then clots, or when that plaque ruptures if it's actually unstable. This is one of the fascinating things about understanding this, that when plaque becomes calcified and can show up on something that we recommend, a calcium score, a coronary calcium score, a CT scan that you can do, that shows the calcium buildup. Now, the calcium buildup isn't really, it is a problem, but it isn't, that hardened plaque isn't as potentially risky as the soft plaque that doesn't show up as easily on those sorts of tests, because the soft plaque can rupture and end up creating the heart attack. So again, what are we looking at here when we look at this issue of what goes on with a heart attack. So we end up where, there's a buildup there in the coronary arteries from damage to the artery. And then a clot forms, and that sort of starves the heart of oxygen. And that's where we end up with, damaged heart, potentially dead tissue, and the issues that arise from that. Again, we've got to look, well, what are the underlying causes then? So what led to this issue? What led to this blockage? What led to the clot? Well, we assert that the same underlying things that led to the plaque buildup also lead to blood clots. So in essence, if you've been suffering from frequent blood clots or issues with even problems with your veins and spider veins and varicose veins, these are all warning signs, because the same conditions that lead to capillary fragility, breaking of your capillaries, spider veins, varicose veins, the same sort of conditions that lead to that also lead to your arteries being assaulted, so to speak. So, there are warning signs. There are skin signs that show up. There are circulatory issues that show up. And so these are all warning signs that your vessels are under assault. And so if you don't do something about it, then we end up with the most important vessels, your coronary arteries, being affected. So we have to really we assert that you have to look for the underlying issues. Whereas, medically, they tend to look at dealing with not the cause, but dealing just with the effect. So if we look at these things here, if you don't deal with things, if you don't prevent atherosclerosis, cardiovascular damage, really, then you're likely to end up with a stent. Now, first of all, they may do balloon angioplasty, where they just simply stick the balloon in there and squash all the fat back. Now, this can be dangerous, because if there's no stable plaque, then the procedure itself can cause the damage to the artery. So that is not without risk. If it's deemed that you need to keep that open, then they will put a stent in there, a creative little bit of wire that keeps everything open. And this is widely performed as a procedure. Dr. William Davis, author of Wheat Belly, who is a cardiologist, said that he was an interventional cardiologist. He used to do these things all the time. And if you follow much of what we're going to share in this session aligns exactly with what he teaches. And he says that you can avoid most, even with people with cardiovascular disease. So we're here talking about preventing it. But he asserts that even with people with cardiovascular disease, you can reverse it without needing to put stents in if you follow the advice more strictly. So that the longer you leave yourself go, the more work you have to do, right? It's obvious. The more the house crumbles down and isn't looked after, the more it will take to rebuild it. Whereas if you maintain it over the long run, then, like, it always amazes me. In the complex here, we have one guy who's just fanatical about looking after his car. And there's his wife's car is like a shopping trolley, hardly ever driven. And it looks immaculate, and it's still got it could go in the museum because it's always been looked after, and it's an old car now. And so it's the same thing as your body. How much are you looking after it, or are you just sort of because it's an everyday driver? It doesn't get the frequent oil changes and the wax jobs and all that sort of thing. So, look, we've got to look after our cardiovascular system. It's so important, and if you don't, that's when you might be somebody that needs these procedures. Then we move towards potentially, the coronary artery bypass grafting. You may have heard of quadruple or triple or whatever bypass. And this is where there's a bit of creative road work going on. So understand that, when you have a blocked road, when there's a blocked road in, whenever there's road works, often you're diverted to a different path, right? And the theory there is that eventually the road work will be improved, and there'll be a much wider, healthier road for you to travel on after the road work. Well, in coronary artery bypass grafting, that's not going to happen. We're basically just using a vein to bypass the blocked artery. And so your body has amazing abilities to cope, but you're not as healthy as you were. It's much better if you can keep all of your bits and pieces in order, shall we say. This is when we see a cross-section, a really high magnification cross-section of an artery that has been affected by atherosclerosis. You can sort of see the different layers, and I really want you to pay attention to that and understand what's going on here in this particular layer. So, and you may not be able to see it here, and I don't have any tools to be able to show you on screen, but you can actually see this layer goes around here and inside. And I'm sorry if you're listening to the podcast version, you can go and watch the actual video version to understand and see some of this imagery. We have an internal layer of the vessel here, and what actually happens is the plaque doesn't just slop up against the side of your artery as such. The cholesterol that you've been blaming doesn't just slop up on your artery and stick there. There's a little bit more that goes on, and I'll be introducing you to that in just a little while. So it's something that's going on sort of in the lining of the vessel that's going on. So again, why is this happening? Why would that happen to the body? Is the body dumb? Does the body lack innate wisdom? Is this a mistake going on in the body? Or is this actually a natural process of the body that's all part of our evolutionary biology, but because you're not functioning within the parameters of your genes and the evolutionary biology, then you're actually giving it insult after insult after insult. So just think about it this way. Have you ever had a cut on your hand or somewhere on your body? A cut or somewhere on your body. You see inflammation, right? It sort of gets inflamed and everything. It may get infected, and then it gets all pussy. And then it may get a scab. If you're somebody who constantly picks at that scab, or let's say it's an open wound that just keeps getting irritated and stretched, or salt gets in it, or dirt gets in it and everything, that becomes fairly ugly looking, doesn't it? And it could even scar. Well, this is the same insult that's happening with your arteries. Okay, and so what we've got to do, what do we do with the actual wound on our body? We try to keep the rubbish out of it. We try to reduce. We keep it clean. We allow the natural healing process of the body to work. We don't keep cutting it. We don't keep insulting it. We don't keep insulting it. Well, the issue is that the endothelial lining on your vessels, the inside lining of your vessels, is only really one cell thick. So similar, like if you listen to any of our gut health talks and everything, it's very similar. There's a lining in the gut and a lining in the vessels. And if you end up breaking holes in the vessels or the gut, then foreign bodies can get in and create inflammation, infections, and an immune response. And this is what we see with people with gut issues, and it's also what's going on inside your vessels. So then we have to go back and go, okay, what's causing the insult? What's causing these vessels to the lining to become damaged and let these foreign particles in? That's what we're going to be talking about. So ultimately, that's what we're really going to be talking about. So when you think about it, there's a lot we can do, and your vessels are just so important. And Sir William Osler said, a man is as old as his blood vessels. That's not a man and not a woman. So ladies, you're as old as your blood vessels too. So we need to look after our blood vessels as best as we can. So on the topic of coronary artery bypass grafting, eminent Sydney-based cardiologist and author Dr. Ross Walker said coronary artery bypass grafting does not cure heart disease, as many lay people do think. They think that. In reality, it's a temporary procedure until you get your life in order. Basically, until you have corrected the cause of whatever the disease that befalls you. It will reoccur after a certain period of time, despite the best efforts of the surgeon or some other physician. So, folks, we need to focus on we need to focus on finding the underlying causes, not just attacking the symptoms. And this is what we talk about in our illness-wellness continuum, that if we look at cardiovascular disease and the treatment paradigm versus a wellness and preventative strategy paradigm, then treatment means that you sort of eliminate the issues as best you can to get you back to not sick. It's not helping you reach a high level of wellness. So let's say you've let yourself go down this illness-wellness continuum. If you let yourself degenerate down to the signs showing up that I talked about, the early warning signs, you ignored them, you started to get symptoms like chest pain and other things going on, and then you ended up basically not able to walk, for example, 100 meters, or can't even walk across the road without massive pain and breathing problems and all that sort of thing. Let's call that disability, but you're still alive. You didn't die early. So, and then it's identified that you have cardiovascular disease, you have blocked arteries, and you end up with stents, maybe even a quadruple bypass. The treatment paradigm hasn't got you back to a high level of wellness. It has saved your life, but it may have only got you back to a neutral point, if that at all. And so your job is to take yourself further. The treatment paradigm, your doctor, just as Dr. Ross Walker said, it's going to reoccur unless you do something differently. That's why many people who have had quadruple bypasses are back 5-10 years later for another round, because they never made any changes. Or what I'm going to assert is they made the wrong changes based on an incorrect paradigm of diet and lifestyle that our system is putting forward. So Benjamin Franklin said that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. In the area of cardiovascular disease, let's face it, there isn't, if we look at what Dr. Ross Walker just said, there isn't a cure in terms of that. There's only an intervention. And that's why I like to say that an ounce of prevention is worth a ton of intervention. So let's, that's what the Healthier Heart movement is all about. Let's really help to educate people around us on what they can do to prevent the world's leading killer. We've really got to pay attention to these particular signs and symptoms and do something about it. And that's why I love this particular quote from Dr. Molly Roberts, that your body will start by whispering, then it'll start talking. And if you don't pay attention, it'll start yelling and shouting, and then you've got an illness. It's too late. So let's focus on some of the earlier signs. But look, here are 6 signs that you should never ignore. Please be aware of this. We're not here to diagnose or treat any disease. We're here to educate our community on what they can do. But please, if you're suffering from any of these things, such as chest pain, shortness of breath, coughing or wheezing that won't go away, fast or uneven heartbeat, palpitations, and arm, neck, jaw, or back pain, unexplained back pain, nausea, lightheadedness, indigestion, these sorts of things, there's signs that you should never ignore and that you should really have looked at. Okay, so especially, for example, the chest pain, it's the number one warning sign for both sexes as far as heart attack goes. Shortness of breath, especially while at rest. So obviously, if it's intense exercise, then that's a little bit different. Coughing and wheezing that doesn't go away. Can be a sign of fluid buildup in the lungs, and that can be, related to your whole cardiovascular well-being. Palpitations, fluttering, pounding, heart racing, worthwhile getting checked out. Again, if with arm, neck, jaw, and back pain, if the discomfort begins or worsens when you've been exerting yourself and then stops when you quit exercise, you probably should get yourself checked out then too. Nausea, lightheadedness, indigestion, this is particularly a warning sign in women. Okay? That being said, once you've got the all clear, I would encourage you to look at the 9 cardiovascular warning signs, which is a free online class that we do. And I'd encourage everybody to take a look at that, just to know the signs, whether it be in you or whether it be in a loved one, so that you can really just help them to know what to do, whether to go and seek further support from a doctor, or whether to take preventative action steps right now. We also have a free online class called the 5 Healthy Heart Myths Busted by Cardiologists. And this is where we look at some of the common myths and then and then actually look at what other free-thinking cardiologists have looked at. So we really do need a bit of a heart revolution. So Dr. Mark Houston, who I just quoted before, who wrote the book, the Hypertension Handbook and What Your Doctor May Not Tell You About Heart Disease. If we did the right things, we could reduce the incidence of cardiovascular disease by 80%. Pretty powerful stuff. And so, I love some of these things that the Heart Health Federation with World Heart Day have been putting forward to it's about making a promise to yourself about these sorts of things, and also to pay it forward to other people to really look at reducing your risk factors. And so they talk about things such as diabetes and high blood pressure and all of these sorts of things. And while this is really important, obesity, etc., really important to look at those risk factors, there are some things that happen before that. So when we look at it, like diabetes, well, what are we doing that leads to diabetes, rather than just looking at diabetes as a risk factor? What are we doing that leads to hypertension? What are we doing that leads to being overweight? What are we doing, so what can we take control of? And so I do think that whole concept of being a heart hero and looking to make your own changes gradually and help others do the same is such a powerful message. And that's really what we've been about here in the Savvy team too. So that particular book that you might want to look at by Dr. Mark Houston, What Your Doctor May Not Tell You About Heart Disease, can give you some insight there. But again, what we do is much of the information I'll be sharing with you is pieced together from many different sources. And so what I've seen is that many of the different doctors sort of come at it from a different angle. And what if we, and each of their different paradigms are slightly different. What if we actually put them all together and looked at the correlation? And what if we, as individuals, did as many of those correlated things as we possibly can? Could we make a difference? And that's what I like to do. It's like, so we're not following any one particular recommendation, where we're actually looking at a broad spectrum approach, a holistic cardiovascular disease prevention strategy based on the research of many experts in their field. By the way, for the physicians, so Dr. Mark Houston wrote the Handbook of Hypertension. That's available, I think, even as a Kindle book for, I think it's $150. So not your average everyday ebook, but that's because it is more for physicians and it's well documented. Houston really recommends that we need to look at a next generation of cardiovascular disease treatment. And so the reason that he's written books for both both physicians as well as everyday people is because people need a path to run on. And he basically was having to say the same thing over and over again to patients, so now they can read the book and know what to do. But we can then take that. So he sees patients who already have cardiovascular disease. Why don't we do something about it early so that we don't end up with those things? So as he said, if we did the right things, we could reduce the incidence of the leading killer in the Western world by 80%. Powerful stuff. And that's exactly why we have put together this whole concept of the healthy heart movement. So let's jump on in and talk about some more of this information around what your doctor may not tell you about preventing heart disease. And so the traditional risk factors, I just went through some of them there, but smoking is one of the big ones. But again, why is smoking an issue? You'll learn that it's because it creates massive amounts of oxidative stress in the body. So it's not the smoking, it's the oxidative stress that it causes. High blood pressure, high cholesterol, being overweight, insufficient physical activity, high alcohol use, type 2 diabetes, poor diet, nutrition, family history. These are all the top things that they look at from a risk factor point of view. But what are the top things that they tend to focus on in medicine? What do you reckon? What do you think they are? Lo and behold, it's these two. It's the high blood pressure and the high cholesterol is what all the focus gets put into. And that's because they're the things that are very easily medicated, and that's the issue. And so Dr. Mark Houston asserts that we need to stop, as physicians, he says, as physicians, we need to stop treating the number and we need to treat the patient. Oh, I just think that is fantastic. We need to stop treating the number. So doctors essentially will basically just reduce your blood pressure, reduce your cholesterol. There we go. We're all good to go. But what you may not know is that even if your doctor did all of the perfect things based on the current treatments, like let's say that you have some of these risk factors, you're dealing with some of them, and you're under the treatment, you've lowered your cholesterol, you've lowered your blood pressure, you're on medication, you're on statins and ACE inhibitors or whatever. And so even if your doctor is doing all of the perfect treatments, half of you with those treatments, according to the statistics, could still die, could still have a cardiovascular incident, because the medication statistically improves your risk. It doesn't necessarily even improve your personal risk. 50 to 75% of those hospitalized with a heart attack actually have normal cholesterol as defined by medical standards. 25 to 50% of patients who develop coronary heart disease and maybe even have a heart attack have none of the top risk factors outlined in traditional medical thinking. 25 to 50% of people who develop coronary heart disease and heart attack have none of the risk factors. What? How could that be? How could that possibly be if this is what we focus on? So we have to zoom out and look at what's been missed. And the issue is that we're in a somewhat of a pharmacologically driven society, not a preventative society. And that's why we're sort of issuing a bit of a call to arms here to focus on prevention. That here in this community, that's why we're doing this whole Healthy Heart movement. It's what we're really all about. It's why we put together the Healthy Heart Challenge. And it's why we do all these, we do the masterclasses and educational stuff to really help you to make the changes. So when we look at, so what are we missing? What are we actually missing here? The focus being on blood pressure and cholesterol is the big issue. And so what Houston says is that there is really a volcano going on inside your arteries. There's a fire that is actually being lit each and every day inside your arteries. So the actual, what's happening to the arteries is really the body's response to the insults. So rather than just treat the response with stents and bypass and medication, why don't we zoom back out and start to look at some of the actual causes? So the new concept of cardiovascular disease really is how to deal with this fire, that's going on inside you and what's fueling the fire in essence. And we're really aligned with that thinking, and I do think it's exciting that many medical professionals are actually coming on board, and they're seeing from their own discoveries. Like Dr. William Davis was doing all the right things and he still ended up with all of the markers. So he started to go, what is going on? I'm a cardiologist, I'm doing all of my own advice, and I'm still seeing my risk factors increase. So that's why he did his own research and wrote Wheat Belly and Undoctored and all those sorts of things. So Dr. Stephen Gundry, cardiologist, he had his own epiphany when he's a fairly famous research scientist and doctor and professor of cardiology, and he had this guy come to him and was told that there's nothing we could do. The doctor said there's nothing we can do. We cannot operate on you. And so the guy did his own research and decided to study him. He was hugely overweight. He did his own. He took a bunch of supplements, antioxidants and trace minerals and B vitamins through all of his research. And that's what we cover in the 7 steps for a healthier heart. So he did all of his own research, this particular guy, reduced his risk factors so much, ended up in Gundry's office, and Gundry didn't know at the time. Dr. Gundry did not know about all the natural things and all that sort of thing. He was firmly entrenched in typical cardiology. And so he didn't believe that. But the guy, he did all the testing, and the guy had indeed reduced his risk factors, and he was safe enough to operate on. And so Dr. Gundry said that, let's do the operation. And he even said, knowing what I know now, I would have kept him on the course that had already reduced his cardiovascular disease, and I wouldn't have operated. That's a cardiologist said that. And here's the thing. The guy found it out himself and made the changes. That is why we truly believe in people helping people, communities helping communities, and truly, really following this pay it forward movement, this healthier heart movement. You can make changes in your life today, and you can help people around you today with understanding the things that can impact cardiovascular disease and prevent it. So what are we going to do about these inflamed arteries? And that's the thing. Houston said that if we could do the right things, we could reduce the incidence of cardiovascular disease by 80%. And I think that one of the biggest issues that we face right now is that medical prevention still has a strong focus on the use of drugs. And so if you want to read up on further things about why we're not big fans of medication, then you can read The Great Cholesterol Deception and also the book Selling Sickness. So again, I'm here to report the news. I'm not a doctor. I'm a passionate researcher, and I want to help you prevent cardiovascular disease. So Houston said that the cholesterol-centric idea for reducing heart disease is really misleading. Misleading. Now, this is coming from a cardiologist. So you just think about it. How many people around you right now, how many people of your friends, family have been told they have high cholesterol? And let's get you on a statin to reduce that. Now, Dr. William Davis says statins are silly. They're virtually useless for most people. That's an ex-cardiologist who said they are silly. They are virtually useless for most people. Now, some cardiologists do still use statins. So Dr. Houston does, Dr. Gundry does. But they say for a limited time until we can correct some of these underlying issues. And they actually use it somewhat for the anti-inflammatory effect, not to reduce cholesterol. So they use it for different reasons. So, and none of those doctors are treating the total number of cholesterol like most doctors are treating. So the cholesterol-centric idea for reducing heart disease is really misleading, according to Dr. Michael Houston. And this is the interesting thing. I love this quote from Mark Twain. It's easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. You know, I don't know what you make of that in terms of general here, but you know, many people are being put on statins each and every day, and they just say my doctor said I need to be on it and all that sort of thing. And so I'm just reporting the news of other cardiologists who would say that they're silly, that they're useless, that they're too damaging. And so I'm not giving you medical advice, and I'm not saying to automatically go against your doctor. I'm saying to educate yourself, to take this on board and to work with your doctor to reduce the need for medication by you taking the healthier heart action steps that we put forward for you. So that's really what it's all about. So let's look at the big picture. The thing that we call heart disease, the thing that we actually call heart disease is the natural response to the insults that we give our blood vessels. It's actually the body, you know, the mistake I believe in medicine today is that for a lot of things that they seem to believe that the body is innately stupid, and we have to prop it up with these sorts of things. We need to fix the innate damage in the body. Whereas I believe the body is innately wise. And many of the experts, many of the people who are really looking at the underlying causes of disease are saying, wow, this is a response. This is a normal physiological response to what we're doing based on genetics and also based on biological adaptation over the years, the evolutionary biology. So we need to then work with our body and not against it. So Fascinating stuff. So the thing that we call heart disease is actually the natural response to the insults that we put on our vessels. Number one is inflammation. Number two is oxidative stress. And number three is immune dysfunction. So there's a virtually unlimited number of different assaults that we can put on our vessels, but they react in one of these three ways. They become inflamed, they end up with oxidative stress, or they end up with the whole immune dysregulation, dysfunction, and that's the issue. So the insults are infinite, but this is the way your arteries react. And remember I talked about before that the lining of your blood vessels, which is called the endothelium, when it gets damaged, it's essentially overreacting. You know, if you antagonize someone, they can overreact. Well, essentially, through the constant antagonizing from your diet and your lifestyle, your endothelial layer, sort of your endothelium, overreacts. And this then causes what they believe is endothelial dysfunction, and that is what the real cause of cardiovascular disease is. So we've got to look at the big picture of what are some of the things that are assaulting our endothelium. Pollution in the air and water, chemicals in the pesticides and foods, heavy metal toxicity, and basically a lack of supportive nutrients to balance the oxidative stress that we're under, that our body's being assaulted with. So when you think about it, if the insults keep coming, your vessels are going to say, look, what am I supposed to do? So it defends itself, and it ends up mounts a defense and produces inflammation. Just like your body mounts a defense if it's cut. It's first inflamed, and then then it could be infected, and then the immune system could be overreact, and the infection becomes rampant. So there's only three things that your vessels can do: get inflamed, get oxidized, have it trigger an immune reaction. So your body is intelligent. It's not dumb. It decides what it needs to do to defend itself, and it keeps doing that. That's good. But when you're chronically assaulting your vessels, the body basically says, you keep giving me these insults. What am I supposed to do here? What do you want me to do around here? So you smoke. Your body says, I didn't really like that. Your vessels say, I didn't really like that. You ate deep fried food. Your vessels say, I didn't really like that. You eat loads of sugar. Your vessels say, I didn't really like that. You end up with periodontal disease or leaky gut, or where bacteria is getting into your bloodstream. Your body says, I don't really like that. So that ends up leading to what they believe is somewhat of a maladaptation in your arteries that becomes a disease in and of itself, and that's heart disease. So it's this endothelial dysfunction that leads to heart disease. So medicine is just pressing back the effect. What can we do to remove the insults? That's what we've got to do. So when we look at this, what's actually going on here, this is just another example of what I was showing you before about the dysfunction happens inside the wall of the artery. So it's beyond the endothelial layer, and what happens is the reaction, this overburdening reaction from inflammation and the immune reaction actually creates this narrowing of the artery. What can be the big problem is if that then goes too rampant and bursts, creating a ruptured plaque, and that's when we end up with the actual clot and the heart attack. Again, we can't just deal with the cause. We can't just deal with the effect. We must start dealing with the cause. So I love this one from Randy Glasbergen here. A bit of a cartoon to lighten the load here. It's normal for a man your age to have chest pain when he drips hot melted pizza cheese on his shirt. So yeah, look, there are some things that are normal. There are some things that are not so normal. Now, in one of the previous sessions that we've done here, and look out for that. That's actually the 9 cardiovascular warning signs session that we did, we actually covered the concept of insulin resistance. And this is really important. Insulin resistance is one of the early markers for cardiovascular disease. So world-renowned expert in lipidology, Thomas Dayspring, said, in reality, the majority of heart attacks are due to insulin resistance. So that is metabolic syndrome. This is basically blood sugar problems. This is diabetes. This is fatty liver, metabolic disease. This is not really necessarily cholesterol. So the root cause here, we're coming back to too much carbohydrates, too much sugar in our diet, not the fat. And when we go back and look at the research, the sugar industry actually paid off medical professionals to downplay the effect of sugar and to put the blame on saturated fat and the fat theory, the lipid theory of the lipid hypothesis for cardiovascular disease. So it's simply outdated or misleading. Even Dr. Houston saying that the whole theory is misleading. So what can we do? Interesting, isn't it? When we really think about it, we've been led astray. We've been misinformed. So what do experts say? Cholesterol and disease experts are called lipidologists, and as I said, one of the foremost is Thomas Dayspring. And really, he says that LDL, it's a terrible biomarker. As I said before, the majority of heart attacks are due to insulin resistance. LDL is a near worthless predictor for cardiovascular issues. So what's this insulin resistance all about? What goes on with insulin resistance, and how can we really deal with it? Well, fundamentally, I'm really wanting to be here sharing with you the things that you can start doing right now. Well, insulin resistance is really from eating too many bad carbohydrates. So yes, eating too many carbohydrates, too much sugar, too many grains, too much of the refined starches is actually what's driving much of the cardiovascular disease. Put with that, many of our Western diet is so low in micronutrients to prevent the oxidative stress. So our diet is primed to create inflammation, oxidative stress, and immune dysfunction. And that's what coronary heart disease is at its essence, according to Dr. Michael Houston, and many of these other experts that you're hearing me mention too. So insulin resistance really is, again, as I said, caused by too much. It's not really caused by too much sugar. It's the response to the sugar. So many people can have a very poor insulin response, and if we don't eventually move towards creating a solution for that, then cardiovascular disease is on the horizon for you. So what can we do to reduce insulin resistance? Cut the carbs. Consider ketosis. So consider operating on more of a ketogenic type of lifestyle. We recommend more of a cyclic ketogenic lifestyle. Follow, really mellow out, manage your cortisol levels. So reduce your stress. You could try intermittent fasting. So in actual fact, many of the experts in cardiology here are now starting to see the huge benefits for fasting overnight. Like, usually you will fast for, let's say, 8 hours when you sleep. Can you stretch that to 12, 14, 16 hours before you eat so that you activate the innate regenerative mechanisms in your body that are called autophagy? And these cardiologists are actually recommending that. So Dr. Stephen Gundry recommends that. Dr. Michael Houston recommends that. So we've been recommending that for years, and I'm so excited to see that cardiologists are also saying that. You may have been joining us for our previous sessions where we talked about Alzheimer's disease. And so Dr. Dale Bredesen recommends that. All of the experts, when they're looking at the literature, are starting to realize that we evolved in a feast and famine type of situation. We never evolved to be in a constantly fed state. We never evolved to be constantly bombarded by sugar and carbohydrates. So if we reduce the sugar and carbs and start to learn to function in between meals, we can really reduce our incidence of cardiovascular disease and all-cause mortality. And slow aging too. So you can reduce your feeding frequency. So, again, we recommend that you begin with skipping snacks. We recommend that you begin with increasing the fat in your diet, downplaying the carbohydrates. And these are the healthy fats, not the bad fats. And then start to really stretch out. Just eat 3 meals a day. Then maybe consider just having 2 so that you can extend your overnight fast. And then from there, you can even experiment with longer fasts to really activate the cleanup mechanisms in your body. So you'll want to detox your body, remove endocrine disruptors from the system, avoid chemicals, so we can help you change brands to safer things in the home. All of these sorts of things actually are interrelated in the body, because if you're ending up with endocrine imbalance, then that can mess up your body's fat storage system, and then the fat is actually somewhat like an endocrine disruptor and secretes the hormones that make you crave. It's more of an interplay than you really ever truly realize. So more micronutrients, all of these sorts of things, really, really powerful. This particular gentleman, Dr. Joseph Kraft, he was a researcher that really looked at diabetes and insulin response. And he said that people with atherosclerotic issues, in other words, heart disease, who are not diagnosed with diabetes are simply not properly diagnosed. And he's really the father of the insulin assay, the ability to where they really look at insulin response. And he believes that that's what we've got to look at, not the typical markers. We've got to look at how we respond to insulin, and you won't get that from most medical testing. Okay, so nevertheless, you don't need the tests necessarily. You need to make the changes. But if you already have atherosclerotic issues or the warning signs of heart disease, then this is even more important for you, because what Kraft states is that those changes have already started to go on in your blood vessels years and years before. Unfortunately, knowing this information, when I see my nephew and the amount of sugar that he eats, I can't control that. But the atherosclerotic changes are beginning now, according to the research. They're beginning. And autopsies have shown that there are teenagers that have shown up with signs of atherosclerosis. So they've basically looked at all that from autopsies from other causes of death, and they've seen the beginnings of atherosclerosis in quite young people. So we're all having the onslaughts from our Western diet, from our Western world. Those who do well are those who make the changes, who make the shift. So cardiovascular disease, leading killer in our Western world. Let's take some actions. So what are these action steps? What are the things that we can actually do to start stacking the odds in our favor? Well, I've gone through some, but things such as an anti-inflammatory diet would be really worthwhile. We recommend the Eat Savvy approach. Okay, so what do you mean by anti-inflammatory? No wheat, so off the gluten, preferably no grains. Opposite to the DASH diet and typical diet where it's heavy in grains, but these are inflammatory. They blow holes in the gut and they cause inflammation as well. So Dr. William Davis asserts no grain whatsoever. Okay? No sugar whatsoever. And Dr. William Davis believes that we should bring our meal carbohydrate level down to about 15 grams per meal of net carbohydrates. He says that the science is clear that these are the things that create the small LDL particles that are made perfectly to trigger heart disease in the vessels. Okay, so they're also easy to, those particular fats, the LDL particles, or the small LDL particles, are easier to oxidize, and they're inflammatory. So they're a recipe for disaster if you've already got insulted arteries. So, cut the carbs, cut the grains. Dr. William Davis suggests do not limit oils focus on eliminate all of the seed oils, the toxic seed oils. So all of the things that you've been told are the healthy polyunsaturated ones. It's wrong. Leave them alone. Okay, they're oxidized, they're rancid, they trigger inflammation in the body, they wreck the balance of good fats to bad fats in your body. And so Dr. Davis encourages things such as the monounsaturated, so the olive oils, and even still getting some butter. So some of the saturated fats are good. All of obviously the omega-3 oils, he believes, are really powerful too. So eliminate the seed oils, and that will also help you to reduce inflammation. Dr. Kate Shanahan in Deep Nutrition explains that many heart attacks, her biggest one, she says, number one, eliminate fried foods. Number one. She said that they've done studies where they see the changes in the endothelial function immediately after fried food, that it's nasty stuff. And she said that there's a higher prevalence of heart attacks after fried foods. So the worst, she asserts, worst thing is any fried food. So again, when we start to put all of these sorts of things together from the different doctors and all of their beliefs, we come up with a bit of an action plan. And that's what we help you to implement here in the Savvy team. I'm trying to give you a broad brushstroke of all the different things that you can do, and then we sort of bring it down into a plan so that you can make it a step-by-step practice. Next thing we've really got to do is optimize nutrition. Because if the number one onslaught, the number one issue is inflammation in the artery, anything we can do to reduce inflammation will help. So heal our gut, get rid of the grains, get rid of the seed oils, those sorts of things. And then we need to supply the body with the nutrients that help to quell that fire. And these are things such as antioxidants. This helps with the oxidative stress and the inflammation as well. So Dr. Ross Walker says, load yourself to the eyeballs with antioxidants. That's what we recommend. And Dr. William Davis says, get your vitamin D optimized because that is such a powerful factor for correcting all sorts of metabolic disorders. It's anti-inflammatory. It raises up your HDL, reduces your triglycerides, reduces your insulin resistance. And so many people are vitamin D deficient because they don't get enough healthy sunshine. They fear the sun. So, of course, we don't want you to go on out when you haven't built up your solar callus, really, and get yourself burned. But you gradually begin to get yourself used to being out in the sun. And we recommend using the free app. There's a paid version of it too called D-Minder. Okay, the D-Minder app, so that you can get safe sunlight exposure to optimize your vitamin D, because it works. Vitamin D is more of a hormone than a vitamin, and so it works differently if you need to supplement. So if you're in a cold climate and you need to supplement, then do that. But vitamin D works differently when supplemented versus when produced by the body. So we also need to obviously get loads of antioxidants. There are things like curcumin, grapeseed extract, green tea extract, the mineral antioxidants such as selenium and zinc, and we need vitamin E and vitamin C and astaxanthin from krill oil. All of these sorts of things, coffee fruit extract. There's a range of things that are extremely powerful. Rosemary, really powerful as well. So there's a range of things that really make such a huge difference. And the best thing is to get them on a daily basis. And also to include lots of healthy antioxidant-rich vegetables in our actual diet. And that's why we encourage you to grab the Eat Savvy diet. The Eat Savvy diet looks to optimize the foods that are rich in micronutrients whilst low in natural plant toxins or chemicals that can trigger inflammation. Okay, so again, the Eat Savvy diet is perfectly primed to do exactly what we're talking about here. So you'll want to optimize things like your omega-3. Now, that's we recommend krill oil with a blend of other seed oils. In some parts of the world, we do use a fish oil, an omega-3 fish oil. The thing is here, long-term supplementation with EPA and DHA. You hear everybody talk about long-term supplementation without balancing it out with some of the things like the gamma-linoleic acid that come from the seed oils actually creates an imbalance in your body. So the blend that we use here is perfectly blended for long-term use. So I love that particular thing. So it's a mixture of things like cranberry and chia and evening primrose and krill oil and these sorts of things. So it's perfectly a good mix of omega-3, 6, and 9, which is what you're really looking to use to optimize. Trace minerals, magnesium and potassium, they will really help to bring down your blood pressure as well and help to stabilize your heart rhythm. You might want to do things to optimize your thyroid. So again, trace minerals really help. Kelp, the green superfoods. We use green superfood blends with spirulina and chlorella and all these sorts of things to optimize the thyroid and the iodine levels and all that sort of thing, rather than having to specifically supplement. So those natural sources are so much better to optimize things. But your thyroid is just a master regulator and really important. And it's one of the big tips that Dr. William Davis focuses on balancing out for his patients. You'll want to rebuild the microbiome because that's implicated in practically everything. So again, we need to get that functioning healthier and well. So one of the things that we have talked about in past topics is to get past sessions is to get a coronary calcium score. And the coronary calcium score really is one of the ways of just checking out how you're going, really. How you're going as far as your artery health. So Dr. Ross Walker was one of the early utilizers of this technology here in Australia. So he was an early adopter of the technology, and he said a coronary calcium score is the best predictive test for heart disease risk. Your cholesterol is not the best predictive test. Your blood pressure is not the best predictive test. The coronary calcium score is. It's the best way to see if you're going to drop dead of a heart attack. So, I mean, and so he was it's much less expensive nowadays. It is not covered on the medical systems in most countries, I think. So certainly not here in Australia, but you can certainly do it yourself. Some particular labs require a doctor's referral, so you'll have to talk with your doctor. Others don't. Okay, they recognize that people are taking self-responsibility and looking to self-manage. So, you know, the other thing that you'll want if your doctor has just ordered a typical cholesterol panel, it doesn't do anything. It's practically useless according to all of the research I've done. What you really need is an advanced lipid profile, which is usually not something that Medicare rebates here in this region. So a full advanced lipid profile so that you can look at not only the ratio of HDL to LDL, but also all of the actual particles, the count and the size and all of those sorts of things, because that all plays into the risk. But what do you got to do? What do you got to do to reduce everything that we've been talking about? Everything that we've been talking about. So this is what can show up on your test when you have a coronary calcium score. It can basically show whether there's a calcium buildup. Now, it can't really show whether or not there are soft plaques, which are dangerous. But I mean, that's a dumb excuse because that's irrelevant. Neither can any other test really show if you have soft plaques. There are some ultrasound technologies that can really look for soft plaques. But then again, you're going to be needing to be at a fairly advanced cardiology clinic to find those things. So what we've really got to do is just make these changes now. Most of you watching this are interested in prevention. You may not have any established cardiovascular disease. If you do, then you're going to want to work with your doctor alongside some of these changes that you can make. Again, so don't rely, Dr. William Davis says, don't rely upon standard cholesterol testing. Get the advanced lipid profile. Dr. Houston recommends the advanced lipid profile. All of this. Again, we've got to look at some of the real underlying things, not just total cholesterol, because it's just not a wise way of looking at the real cause. Because so many people have normal cholesterol and still die of heart attacks, so it's not the real marker. So Dr. Davis says, do not succumb to statins. They are silly and hardly have any effect for the vast majority of people. Now, other doctors, as I mentioned there, like Dr. Houston and Dr. Gundry, do use them because of their initial anti-inflammatory effect. So leave that in your hands, those thoughts in your hands. The next one, another action step, would be to exercise, not for weight loss, but to improve your insulin sensitivity, to improve your sleep, to improve your mood, to improve all the hormones that are interrelated that go on in your body. It's just so powerful. But again, if you are struggling with weight issues, that's another thing that you're going to want to tackle as far as the action steps. So we have a range of different programs to help you to lose fat. So, for example, our rapid fat loss protocol, our detox and eat savvy regime, if you just need to lose a little bit. We have a body transformation challenge. So you might want to start there because they're nutritive approaches anyway that really look to optimize all of your body systems. And this is the thing that we really need to look at when we're talking about zooming out. What has fascinated me the more I've researched these things, and even doing one talk after the other, so really being able to share with you on the how to prevent Alzheimer's disease, and then talking about how to prevent heart disease. They're turning up to be the exact same things. So all of the experts are looking in their area of expertise. So, for example, Dr. Dale Bredesen and Dr. David Perlmutter are looking in the area of the brain and the nervous system. But then we come back out and we see people such as Dr. Michael Houston and Dr. William Davis. Their expertise is more in the circulatory system. So but they're saying the same things. So if we look at all of the systems of the body, like the branches of a tree, the same things are going to support our all-round well-being. We've got to optimize the body systems by doing the things such as reducing inflammation, providing ample nutrition, turning off the toxins, getting healthy, plenty of sleep, getting healthy sunlight exposure, all of these sorts of lifestyle changes. So disease tends to show up in your area of greatest weakness, whether that, often that's genetically. So holistic wellness focused programs help all of your body systems. So, you can tweak things to support your area of greatest weakness. That's the great thing. But fundamentally, we've got to reduce excess toxicity and increase our nutrition. Back to what we assert are the fundamental issues here. And look, make some dietary changes. The one agreement that I've seen across the board in these cardiologists that I've researched, and also in all of the people wanting to avoid neurodegenerative disorders, none of them have found that grains provide anything but a detrimental effect. None of them. Now, this is really important because many people just move on to gluten-free. They say, well, I eat gluten-free, but then you're on some other grain or some other starch. So gluten-free products, for example, don't have gluten, but they're often rich in potato starch. That's inflammatory. They're often rich in rice starch. That just turns to sugar in the bloodstream. So all sorts of things like this. They're highly processed carbohydrates that will trigger insulin resistance over the long term. So I would recommend that you follow the Eat Savvy approach, and you can sort of read up on more of the information on other information that we have, blogs, some of these books and everything. But just like the Cookie Monster, just like Cookie Monster's doctor said, this will be your 4th triple bypass surgery in the last 2 years. It's time to start rethinking your diet, Cookie Monster, right? And so here's a lady in the doctor's office. The high-carb diet I put you on 20 years ago gave you diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Whoops. Folks, your body will start whispering, then it'll start talking, and if you don't pay attention, it'll start yelling and shouting, but then you have an illness. So I wanted to, just as we're wrapping up in this section here, talk about collagen throughout the body. So collagen, one of the things that is one of the parameters that is believed that sort of supports the vessel strength is the integrity built by collagen. And so collagen is right throughout the body in terms of your gum health, your eye health, and your nervous system health, healthy hair, skin, and nails, your cardiovascular system and internal organ health, your gut health, and your joint, bone, muscle, and connective tissue health as well. And so we've seen some tremendous benefits when people optimize collagen. So, for example, consuming more bone broths can heal the gut and really help the system. Getting collagen from other sources. So we recommend a bio-optimized collagen liquid that really helps to make a difference very quickly. So something that bone broth simply wouldn't be able to do, something that hydrolyzed collagen simply cannot do. But those things such as bone broth and hydrolyzed collagen provide the building blocks for the body. So they're beneficial, but not as quickly as using a supplemental form. So there's so many things, and this can really, by getting the collagen into yourself really quickly, it can start to strengthen the system, really help with your cardiovascular and internal organ health. So collagen keeps your heart healthy. I mean, it's the most abundant protein in the heart. It provides a structural framework for cardiac muscle cells. It provides stiffness and integrity to the walls of your vessels, the vessel walls and the walls of your heart. It aids in force transmission to help pump the blood. So, the atherosclerosis and arterial stiffening, which is a significant risk factor for cardiovascular disease, well, research has shown that good collagen integrity can reduce the risk of this condition. And so our Western diet has become almost depleted of collagen, as well as depleted of antioxidants to help support collagen synthesis, such as vitamin C. In addition to it being the most abundant in things such as heart tissues, essentially the vessels, the blood vessels are made up of collagen and elastin. So collagen keeps your vessels strong. It keeps the inside of your arteries smooth. It keeps your blood pressure controlled. Collagen's a metabolic booster. And this is probably one of the, a particularly exciting thing around it is that when we age, we can see sort of muscle degeneration, and the heart is an important muscle. So one of the important amino acids found in collagen is called glycine, and this is important in the integrity of the vessels as well. So just amazing when you really start to look at the fact that we've abandoned many of the traditional patterns of eating, then all of these Western diseases have developed. So Dr. Weston Price said that all of the Western diseases, and he was a dentist and he studied all sorts of different cultures around the world in their natural environment. And he said that when we start to instigate more of the Western patterns of eating, all of the Western diseases developed. And so Dr. Kate Shanahan also, in her book, Deep Nutrition, talks about how we've abandoned the traditional cuisines where we use cooked meat on the bone and had the bone broths and all that sort of things. And so we're missing those micronutrients that come from that type of food. We're just eating flesh protein. So because of the fat hypothesis, the lipid hypothesis, we eat lean chicken breast and remove all skin and don't have the bone, for example, rather than eating the whole chicken, saving the bones and making them into bone broths. And that's really, all of this that we're talking about here is all of what the Eat Savvy diet is all about. So I would just encourage you to take a look at that, download that. I would also encourage you, if you really, just as a preventative thing even, but certainly if you're concerned about some of the risk factors, to take our Healthy Heart Challenge. That's where we really help you to instigate the 7 Healthy Heart action steps for a period of time, for 3 to 6 months. So even as a test case, do that. Try that and watch what happens. We have people who had no signs of cardiovascular disease and took the challenge and said that they felt no more cold hands and feet. They felt better. They said they had clearer thinking. They had more energy levels. So, in other words, they were changing some of the underlying markers and really powerful. If you just want to do it as a precaution, you can do it for just a month to test things out and see how you go. But really you want to try to do things for 3 3 months or longer. So we have our masterclass that you can really delve into all of that information on the 7 steps for a healthy heart. So check that out as well. So I guess I'd like to, as we're going through and finishing up this particular section, if you're currently undergoing treatment for cardiovascular disease, then talk with your doctor about your goals and concerns. Talk with your pharmacist and set an appointment to deal with any possible drug interactions and look at the side effects of the drugs. And if you are met with any resistance, like crossed eyes and raised eyebrows, crossed arms and everything, then, I would simply suggest that you find better educated professionals. They exist, okay? So it's your GP or practitioner's responsibility to give you the very best treatment they can. But they can't do what they don't know. And your doctor is doing the best from their knowledge, and it's naive for you to think that your doctor is the font of all knowledge. So get educated and take part in your own care. If your doctor avoids answering questions about medication concerns and side effects, then in my opinion, that's bordering on medical negligence, because there's a lot of studies that are well documented about the damaging effects of medication, okay? So, a possible script might be, hey, doc, like if you're looking, what do I say? What do I say? Well, you might say, hey, doc, I'm looking to improve my diet and I've been trying, but since I'm not good all the time and I have high stress and all that sort of thing, I'm going to start on a regime of vitamins, antioxidants, essential fatty acids to make up for my deficiencies, for example. You could say that. I assume that you'll be able to keep an eye on things as usual. So what I'm really asserting for you here is that you're not asking for permission. It's your health, your health. You're actually asking for ongoing support and continued monitoring, which is your doctor's role. I say, okay, so it is so important to play an active role in your own care. And that's the problem that many really good doctors face, that people will not actually care for themselves. And that's where medication is perfectly warranted. Because if people are not going to make any changes, then the medication is all that you can do. There's even problems with people then taking the medication. But doctors are also time-strapped and busy, so don't expect an educated answer in a 5-minute appointment, okay? Now, also, according to all of these doctors I've researched, none of them asserted that they were educated on prevention. They had to do the research themselves, so just understand that. Dr. Ross Walker, author of Highway to Health, says that many doctors offer lip service to prevention. They don't put much effort into developing plans, programs, or preventative strategies for their patients, or for that matter, themselves. And he's somebody who's specialized more in preventative cardiology. He also asserts that it's interesting that US statistics revealed that 50% of cardiologists actually take nutritional supplements as a preventative, and yet far less, 25 to 30%, prescribe them for their patients. And he believes that Aussie doctors are even more closed-minded. Now, it's interesting when we talk about that issue of why would doctors take the supplements themselves, believe in them themselves, but not recommend them? It's not even their fault, it's the system's fault. Many doctors get themselves in trouble because they're sharing what they believe in. And because it's not part of the dogma, the medical paradigm, they get themselves in trouble with the governing bodies. So please understand that it may not even be, your doctor may be a free-thinking doctor, and it's not even his or her fault that they can't share the information with you. This is why we're here to encourage you to get educated. Encourage you to get educated. We've had members actually go to their doctor and say, I'm doing this, and the doctor goes, excellent idea. But they had to say that. They didn't ask the doctor, should I do this? They had to say, I'm taking antioxidants to reduce my oxidative stress. And the doctor said, excellent idea. I'm taking krill oil supplements to reduce my inflammation and balance up my fatty acids. And the doctor said, excellent idea. But your doctor wasn't able to suggest that because of the medical model that we have in most Western cultures. So just understand that. Understand that. You're responsible, okay? That's why we're here to guide you along the journey. Now, also, the other thing to be aware of is that regarding drug interactions, read up on the drugs and their side effects, because we've seen many community members suffering from an issue, and they actually say, is there anything that we can do for this intense foggy thinking that I have, for example? And when we say, do you happen to be on statins? And they say yes. Also, read up on the side effects of statins. And they read up on the side effects of statins and foggy thinking and brain challenges. And so when they go to their doctor and say, look, is there any way I can get off this? Do I really need this? And they come off their statin, then their brain fog lifts and they go, so what was the use of being on some nootropic herb, which we could have encouraged them to be on, to support the brain fog, when they just needed to eliminate the medication that was giving them the harm? So that's where we really want to zoom back out and really help you to start to uncover some of the underlying causes so that you're not just going from one issue to another. That's what we're about here in the Savvy team. We really want to help you reach that higher level of health and lifestyle. I want to leave you with a quote here in this particular section that I shared previously in our Alzheimer's session. And Dr. Dale Bredesen, author of The End of Alzheimer's, said, it's no longer about monotherapeutics. 21st century medicine is about programmatics. It's about developing a program to really help to optimize your well-being. All right? And that's what I think, that's just exactly the same whether we're dealing with cardiovascular disease or cognitive decline. We've got to develop a holistic program, and you're the one that needs to follow it. The exciting thing is that, we were taught by our original mentor in the health and well-being field many decades ago, given the right conditions, including physical, emotional, and mental preparedness, your body will always heal itself. So look, I hope you found all this information really valuable. If you're looking for guidance and support, then we're here to help you. So we like to say, for your best wellness journey, you need a plan, you need some solutions, you need guidance, and you need community. And certainly the HeartMath Institute is really studying the fact that community makes a difference. All of the cardiologists that I talked about are starting to see that community makes a difference. Having people that are aligned with your level of thinking makes a difference to your long-term well-being, both emotionally, physically, and mentally. So how can we help you? We would love to know, how can we help you? We have an online survey that sort of asks, what are the things that you're looking for support in? It's a confidential survey, so it helps us to know what areas you're suffering from issues with, and then we can help you work out a plan. So the first step would be to request an invitation, fill out that form, come on into our community, and let's get you started on the path to wellness. So that's it for this particular Healthy, Wealthy, Wise show. So that's it for me. From me, all the best. Join us in this Healthier Heart movement. Let's help you make a difference in your own risk factors for cardiovascular disease, to help your family around you, and let's pay it forward. Let's create that ripple effect that truly changes the world. If we really acted on the right things, 80% of cardiovascular disease could be eliminated. That's it from me. All the best. Catch you next time on the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise show. And until next time, it's Corey Sievers here, encouraging you to be savvy.